Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Winston Tabb, the Sheridan Dean of University Libraries, Archives, and Museums, and I'm delighted that you could join us online today for a celebration of Grace Notes and American History, 200 Years of Songs from the Levy Sheet Music Collection. This exhibition opened almost a week ago at the George Peabody Library in Baltimore's Mount Vernon Cultural District, marking the reopening of the library after a 2-year closure. It was really a thrill to be there in person on Sunday for our first exhibition opening in more than 2 years. Grace Notes is on view through July 31st, and I warmly invite those of you who live nearby or who may be planning to visit Baltimore over the coming weeks to stop by the Peabody Library, known locally as the city's Cathedral of Books, to see this very special exhibition in person. Joining us today are many members of our Friends of the Libraries, and I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge their enthusiasm and support for this program. And I also wish to thank the members of the Sheridan Libraries Advisory Board, whose commitment to the libraries made this exhibition possible. But lastly, I want to recognize the efforts and intellectual curiosity of the Levy family, many of whom I know are joining us today. Lester Levy was a 1918 graduate of Johns Hopkins, and he began giving his sheet music collection to the university in 1976 with the wish that it be used, played, studied, and appreciated. His vision and thoughtfulness guided the growth of his collection, which was very much a labor of love for him and his wife, Eleanor. Their hope was that the collection of over 30,000 pieces of music would be finding a permanent home in a research library where it would be actively used for teaching and scholarship. And we're very proud that we at the Sheridan Libraries are that home. That popular sheet music is a subject worthy of scholarly inquiry is a fairly recent idea, but the wealth of materials provided by the Levy collection, combined with our curators, librarians, researchers, and students, have placed Johns Hopkins University at the forefront of this fascinating field. The continued support and partnership of Lester and Eleanor's daughters, Ruth and Ellen, and their grandchildren, have ensured that Mr. Levy's extraordinary collection, one of the largest digitized collections of sheet music in the world, can be preserved and made accessible to all. With the recent endowment of a curator's position dedicated to the collection, and now this major exhibition, the Levy family is making it possible for us to realize Mr. Levy's vision. With the scholarship, inspiration, and enjoyment that the collection has already engendered, and with the research and teaching that the collection will inspire for generations to come. It is now my great pleasure to introduce today's presenters. First, I'm very proud to introduce Sam Bessen, who is the inaugural Ellen and Lester Levy Family Curator of Sheet Music and Popular Culture at the Johns Hopkins Sheridan Libraries. He is the key resource for those who study popular music history, focusing not only on the music, but on all the things that popular music can teach us about the history of our country. Sam is also the founder and artistic director of Baltimore's In the Stacks performance series, and holds a Master of Music degree in horn performance from the Peabody Conservatory of Music. Joining Sam today is Teresa Ferrara, who's an award-winning soprano dedicated to music's power to transcend social divides and inspire people of all ages and backgrounds. She also holds a Master of Music degree in voice from the Peabody Conservatory of Music. And now, Sam, over to you, our Levy curator.
Thanks so much, Winston, for the really wonderful introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. As Winston said, I'm Sam. I am the curator of sheet music and popular culture here at the Sheridan Libraries. I get to oversee really all of our historic sheet music collections. I've been working with these collections for about 3 years, and it's been incredibly rewarding. I find something new and fascinating every day. I've discovered a new dust allergy, which has been fantastic. But I get to do a lot of wonderful research into our collections. I get to provide a lot of information to our students, faculty, staff, colleagues, external researchers. I've had many wonderful opportunities to bring students in to engage with our collections. And last but not least, my favorite part is I get to do programs, public programs, exhibitions. So let me go ahead and move over to my slides here. So I'm very excited to introduce our current exhibition at the George Peabody Library. It's called Grace Notes in American History, 200 Years of Songs from the Lester Levy Sheet Music Collection. As Winston mentioned, we opened last week and will be open through July 31st of 2022. So today I'm going to be showing you a couple of my favorite objects. There are over 100 songs on display, so I will not be able to get to most of them, but hopefully I'll show you some interesting ones today. And then we'll move to a couple of performances that are related to our sheet music collections. So in exploring sheet music, I think, musicians and even non-musicians alike, I think we can tend to think of sheet music as just a set of instructions for a performer, which is true. In essence, that is what sheet music was intended to do. But as this exhibition explores, there were really so many different purposes and functions of sheet music in American history, ranging from, visual art to social media, spreading information, spreading propaganda. And especially before the invention of the phonograph and before radio was popular, sheet music really was the main way of bringing music into our homes. So the main collection that is on display in this exhibition is the one you've heard a couple of times, the Lester Levy collection. As Winston mentioned, this is really one of the largest digitized sheet music collections anywhere in the world. It was amassed by Lester Levy in Baltimore, who worked for a local hat company, his family's hat company, actually, MS Levy and Sons, and they made straw hats when straw hats were really in their heyday. So as Lester Levy was traveling around the country as a salesman for the company, he would stop at all of these antique stores and he would purchase sheet music. He also purchased quite a bit of music at auction. And as he amassed his collection, it was really important to him to spread his music and spread his information about music. He kept all this music in his home, but he really worked hard to get this music into the community and to use it to educate the public. So the first sort of section of the exhibit is dedicated to illustrating Lester Levy's collecting practices and how he brought the music into the community. So I'm going to show you two quick objects from there. The first is this one. And I definitely don't expect you to read all of it, but this is a letter that Lester Levy wrote to Susan Colgan from a book publishing company, and he's talking about how he obtained his first edition of the Star-Spangled Banner. Star-Spangled Banner was first printed in Baltimore in 1814, and there are really only 11 or 12 of these left in existence, so it really is one of the rarest and most valuable songs ever printed in the United States. Now, Lester Levy really wanted one, of course. It would be the crown of his collection. All of his colleagues knew that he wanted one, and he eventually got a tip that there was a gentleman staying at this hotel in Maryland that had a first edition. So Lester drove up to see him. He noticed that the first edition had a couple of sort of tear markings on the side of it, but he recognized it was a real first edition, and so he bought it immediately. On his way home, he decided to stop at an antique store, and he walked in and said, do you have any sheet music? And they said, yes, we actually have a first edition of the Star-Spangled Banner that someone was looking at just this morning. So Lester went back. He noticed that his version that he had just purchased had been ripped out of this book. So he, very dutifully gave it back to the antique store owner and was able to eventually repurchase it, although he spent quite a bit more than originally because now the antique owner or the store owner knew how much this was worth. The next letter I'm going to show you is from a celebrity. This is actually from Ira Gershwin. Now, Lester Levy, as he was collecting these songs, he was very unafraid to reach out to local celebrities like Irving Berlin and Ira Gershwin. The way that he did it was very intelligent. He sort of leveraged his position in his hat-making company to reach out and offer to make custom hats for Ira Gershwin and for Irving Berlin. So we have these two sort of funny letters back from them. Here, Ira Gershwin says, "Thank you very much for the pumpkin cap," which I am dying to know what a pumpkin cap actually looks like. You can see he's listed his head size here. It makes me wonder if we have documentation of Ira Gershwin's head size anywhere else. And then what's sort of significant too is at the bottom here, Ira Gershwin is asking Lester Levy a question about a first edition of their popular song Swanee. So this sort of illustrates both the lengths that Levy went to create his collection, but also how he had established himself as an authority on popular music. So for the rest of this exhibition, this is my first exhibition here. This is the first major exhibition of the Levy collection in many decades. So rather than focusing on a sort of hyper-specific part of the collection, like music of war, for example, I decided to focus on all of the different strengths of the collection overall. So one of the strengths of the collection is in autographed songs. We have many, many autographed songs. One of my favorites is this one called Lady Lindy, We're All For You. This shows a really fantastic picture of Amelia Earhart. And if you look very closely, you can see that it is autographed by Amelia Earhart. Now, it's always sort of difficult to verify an autograph on sheet music. In fact, a lot of the sheet music that I come across belonged to many people and was played in their home before it came to us. So sometimes we'll have 2 or 3 autographs on every song, and in most cases, it's just the name of the person who owned the music, just like we might write our name on the inside cover of our favorite book. But I was able to track down a couple of different other versions of the song that did not have the autograph on them, and was able to compare it with some known examples of Amelia Earhart's signatures. So we think this is most likely authentic. Another particular strength of the collection is in music of war. In fact, the collection is sort of bookended by music of war. So the earliest song that we know is dated in the collection is from the Revolutionary War, and some of the latest songs are from the Vietnam War. This is a song here that is the earliest dated song in the collection. So you can see it's very small here, but this was published in 1779 in London. As you can see, it's called The Good Subjects of Old England. There's this very cute picture at the top of these people heartily toasting the king. And this is sort of an anti-American song. It's sort of scolding the colonies for leaving for the Revolutionary War. So it says, with the jolly full bottle, let us toast the king. It says somewhere, may all contrivers be vanquished. And then it just repeats over and over and over again, we must be good subjects, we must be good subjects, we must be good subjects. Almost like it's like you're writing lines on a chalkboard. So it's sort of a hilariously bad song, but one that I'm very glad that Lester Levy found. We also have a couple of songs from the First World War. So these are 2 examples here of sort of opposing attitudes about war that can be found in the collection. So on the left, you see, I didn't raise my boy to be a soldier. You can see above that, it says A Mother's Plea for Peace. This one was published in 1915 as the war was starting. And you can see this mother is holding her son. She's put down her knitting. They're sitting in front of a fireplace. She's protecting him from this cloud of war that's hanging above their heads. And both of them are looking sort of directly at us as the viewer. You'll also notice that there is this picture of someone identified as Chief Tendahoa. It was very common in sheet music to leave these sort of blank inserts on the front where publishers could put a local celebrity to sort of market the song. So I was able to look a little bit into who this person was, and according to a couple of period newspapers, I believe it was the New York Times, Chief Tendahoa was a native Sioux performer in vaudeville shows. As opposed to I Didn't Raise My Boy to Be a Soldier, this sort of clearly anti-war song, we have Over There written by George M. Cohan. And this sort of became the American anthem to the First World War. It's, I wouldn't maybe go as far as to call it a pro-war song, but it's a very supportive song. It's very patriotic. It's sort of inspiring soldiers to join, but also kind of rallying the country around this collective cause. So, you can just see these were 2 of the most popular songs of the 1910s. And they have very, very different outlooks on war. The next section of the exhibit is possibly my favorite. I called it Colorful Covers, and I basically chose 20 of what I think are the most beautiful or intricate or interesting covers in the collection that sort of collectively illustrate these these practices of publishers competing for our attention, which of course happens on social media today. Sheet music was an early form of social media, and these covers would have been displayed in window displays, much like we might see at a department store today. So these publishers went to great lengths to compete with each other for our attention. And the question that I sort of pose to visitors that are coming across this wall is, which cover caught your eye first? And which one would you be most tempted to buy? You might also notice this sort of whimsical balloon that is hanging up on the wall to the left. This is part of a sort of scavenger hunt that we've created, where we've pulled some interesting images off of the covers and stationed them around the gallery and on the cases to see if you can find where they're pulled from. Now, I mentioned the question I posed is, which cover caught your eye first and which one would you buy? This is the one that I probably would buy. This is the Wide Awake quadrilles. What's interesting about this one is that there is no text. There are no lyrics to this song. A quadrille was a sort of dance. So there is nothing inside of the song that addresses why there is a dog on the cover. So it seems like the entire reason for including this dog is for us to think it is cute and to buy the song, which I think this is from the 1860s. It would have worked on me now, and it would have worked on me back then. So another portion of the exhibit is sort of dedicated to protest movements. Music was used to both rally people to join a protest movement and also to provide a sort of cultural legitimacy for that movement. So I chose 4 protest movements: emancipation, suffrage, labor, and temperance or prohibition. So this song here is from the Civil War. It was published around 1863. And with the Emancipation Proclamation, Black men were not only permitted to join the Union Army, but they were encouraged and actively recruited into the Union Army. So if you look closely underneath the image here, you'll see that this was published by the Supervisory Committee for Recruiting Colored Regiments in Philadelphia. So this is a really early example of a publisher marketing directly to Black men and using music to try to inspire them to join the Union Army. The last object I'm going to show you here before I take any questions that you may have, again, feel free to put those in the chat, is this really, really beautiful piano that sits in the middle of the gallery. So this piano was actually built in Baltimore in 1899. It is being very generously loaned to us by the Peabody Conservatory. It's honestly one of the most beautiful instruments I've ever seen. It's got all of these really intricate faces and cherubs that are carved into the legs. And if you look around the outside of the piano and on the headboard, you'll see all of this really, really intricate wood inlay, marquetry. So all of this was inlaid wood. The keys are beautiful, the legs of the piano are beautiful, and it actually has a really fantastic sound too. So we're planning some public programs that'll be taking place in the gallery, and we're hoping to use this piano for at least one of those. So there's so much more that's on display. I couldn't even get to every section of the exhibit, let alone every object, so I really hope that you'll come down and see the exhibit for yourself. Before we get to the performance section today, I wanted to pause and see if there are any questions that I can answer. All right, let's see. So one of the questions I see is, did Lester Levy's society have a greater musical literacy than we do? Could most people read music? That's a really great question. So publishers knew that some people could not read music, and in trying to market their songs to as many people as possible and to make them as accessible as possible, they would do a couple of different things. One is they would print things called song sheets, which were much smaller, and we actually have a couple of those on display in the gallery. A song sheet had no musical notation whatsoever. It just had lyrics. And then at the top, it would say, sing this to the tune of Yankee Doodle, for example. So people would know the tune, and they would simply be able to apply the lyrics directly to that tune. Something else that publishers would do frequently is they would include a chart, what's called a chart, for ukulele and for guitar. So above each measure, they would either put a sort of a drawing of a fingerboard for a guitar and show you where to put your fingers, or for people that were a little bit more musically literate, they would put actually names of the chords. So it would say G, A, F, and if you knew how to play those chords on whatever instrument you have, you would be able to sort of accompany yourself. That's a really good question. The next question I see here, is there somewhere I can listen to recordings of what's in the exhibit? Yes, that's a fantastic question. So we have an iPad in the gallery that has expanded content. So we have some extended descriptions. You can actually use the iPad to see all of the sheet music that's behind the covers on display. And then we have a QR code where you can scan and pull up this digital exhibit on your own device. And I've created a playlist that has recordings of all of the songs. Well, not all of the songs on display, but all of the recordings that I could find of songs on display. Next question, how did you and your team approach presenting subject matters which might be difficult? Yes, this is a really fantastic question. So Lester Levy recognized that, sheet music and popular culture has not always been, or has been difficult in our country's history, mainly in minstrelsy. So if you're not familiar, minstrelsy was a form of theater and entertainment that was popular really from around 1820 all the way up through the 1920s. Where performers would put on blackface and they would kind of characterize African Americans. It was an extremely racist form of theater, and there are quite a few songs that are published with really horrific and racist imagery, not only of African Americans, but of immigrants, Jewish people, and Native Americans too. So I decided that I did not want to put these songs on display, both because I did not think they deserve public display, but also because they can be traumatic for people that aren't expecting to see them. So in order to recognize these songs and contextualize them, we've included an extended page on the iPad in the gallery that dives into some of the difficult and white supremacist music in our collections. But I'll also add that these parts of our collections are very actively used by our students. In fact, most of the classes that I've been able to teach with the collection have been about racism and popular culture, using all of these different sheet music covers. That's a really good question. The next question I see here, what was Levy's particular relationship to sheet music? That's a good question. So Lester Levy played the piano, and he actually wrote an autobiography that was compiled posthumously and published by the Jewish Museum of Maryland called Of Hats and Harmonies. And in there he sort of talks about him falling in love with music. And there's a quote from him there where he says that I think he saw a couple of songs in a window display and he purchased them for not much money. And soon after that, someone came to him with some bound volumes of sheet music. And he purchased those, and it seems like it just sort of snowballed from there. All right, the next question I see here, is the Levy collection unique in the world of sheet music? Another really good question. So there are many other large sheet music collections. UCLA has a great collection. University of Indiana has a fantastic sheet music collection. Library of Congress, of course, has a massive sheet music collection. The Levy collection is unique in that it is digitized. So, we've been really grateful for the support of Lester Levy's family in making this collection more accessible, in digitizing it, and collecting really fantastic data in the collection. So, for example, while many sheet music collections will list the title of the song and maybe the composer, when we did the metadata for the Levy collection originally, and when I say we, I mean this was done back, I believe, in the 90s, they captured so much more information. They captured the publisher, they captured the lithographer, the engraving plate number, they captured the first line of the text, the first line of the chorus. So really more information than we can fit onto a web page for each song, but it means that it's an incredibly useful resource for researchers that are looking to get through a large amount of data very quickly. Let's see, what can we learn from the physical qualities of sheet music? Really good question. So when you come in the gallery and you sort of look through, you'll notice that the sheet music is in various qualities of physical state, I'll say. And you can kind of look through the history of sheet music and see all of the different types of paper that they used and the qualities of paper. Sheet music was even published in newspapers, which we have some, but they are really deteriorating quite quickly. And based on when a song was published and the quality or the current state of the sheet music, we make different decisions about how best to preserve them. But for example, the song that I showed you earlier from 1779 is in incredibly good, condition relative to its age. But there are also songs that were published in, the 1920s that are in absolutely terrible condition. So a lot of it just comes down to the choices that the publisher made, the resources that they had, and sort of the publishing, mechanisms that they used. Next question, how has designing an exhibit changed in a post-pandemic world? This is a really great question. I started in this position in January of 2020, so really right before the world changed, and had to pivot away from my passion of public programming and do virtual programming. So I'm incredibly grateful to Hopkins at Home for being a fantastic platform for us to do that. I think now we're sort of moving into this sort of hybrid space between virtual programming and in-person programming. So for example, this lecture right now, the choice to do this virtually was made because of the pandemic and in trying to balance promoting the exhibit and spreading information about the exhibit versus inviting 100 people or 200 people into the gallery. So it has been challenging. I'm really, really grateful to Winston and to our communications team for our flexibility as we've sort of had to navigate these very constantly changing circumstances. All right, the next question I see here, I'll just double check the time. When putting this together, what felt important about doing this exhibit right now? It's a really good question. So on a slightly selfish level, the fact that I am recently started here, that we've recently endowed this position and sort of solidified sheet music as a priority for the libraries. It felt important to celebrate that and to recognize that through an exhibition on sheet music. There was one case in particular that was sort of interesting to put together, which was we have a whole case on music of war. And it sort of examines all of the different ways that sheet music has been used in war, ranging from comforting soldiers, providing soldiers with entertainment, comforting families, taking a stance against war, spreading information about what's happening in war. And it's just, and all of the tours that I've given, someone has always said, it's really interesting to think about all of these uses of music in war when, we are seeing a war happening today and we don't know where that war is going to take us. And to see how information has spread about that war and to see, how music is starting to play a role. So I'm personally very, of course, anxious, but also interested to see how music is going to sort of play a role in what's happening in the world today. Next question I see here. What is your favorite song in the exhibit? Great question. It's a difficult question. I think I have some favorite songs musically and I have some favorite songs visually. I don't have an image here to show you, but there is a song called Made in the Moon, and that little whimsical balloon that I showed you that is up on the wall is pulled from the Made in the Moon. The song it's undated, likely from mid-19th century, before the invention of air travel, or at least planes. And there's this maid sitting on the moon, and all of these telescopes have been constructed to look at the Maid in the Moon, including this flying plane and this flying balloon. So it's just really fascinating to see just the imagination and the inventiveness of these composers and publishers in trying to sort of capture the creativity. All right, so that was the last question that I saw. So, of course, we can't talk about music for an hour without hearing some music. So I'm excited to share with you a couple of performances by Teresa Ferrara, who is a fantastic soprano, and her colleague, Allison Freeman. Teresa is an alum of the Peabody Institute. She's very active in performing in Baltimore and DC. We actually chose to pre-record these performances just to make sure we had the best connection quality. As we all know, Zoom can be quite fickle, especially when it comes to live performance. So we felt like the best way to make sure we had the best internet connection was to pre-record these performances. So the first song that you're going to be hearing is by George and Ira Gershwin. As I mentioned earlier, we have quite a few songs signed by Ira Gershwin. And one of them is here. This is Waiting for the Sun to Come Out. And as a result of this correspondence between Lester Levy and between Ira Gershwin, we have all of these songs with very sarcastic and personal notes on them. So this is a note that Ira Gershwin wrote to Lester Levy about this song. He says, "Not a very good lyric, but since it's my first published song, okay, I'll autograph it for you, Mr. L." We have a couple of these on display. The one that Teresa chose, I asked her to choose a song by the Gershwins. She chose one written in 1937 for Shall We Dance? So this is They Can't Take That Away From Me. All right, so the next song that you will be hearing is one called Dear Friend. Now, this was recorded by Ethel Ennis in 1964. If you're not familiar with Ethel Ennis, I would highly, highly recommend taking a listen. She was an incredible jazz performer here in Baltimore, and she passed away recently, and she left us her collection, which we are currently processing as part of the Inheritance Baltimore project. And they were very gracious enough to allow me to borrow a song mid-processing so that I could include it in the exhibition. So the song that's on display is this one here. It's Billie Holiday's God Bless the Child. But the song that Teresa chose to perform is one called Dear Friend by Jerry Bach and Sheldon Harnick. So the last song that you will be hearing today is a very strange one, and this is called Mrs. Poe. So this is something that I happened to find as I was preparing for this exhibition, and my original intent was to have some music by a famous poet, because there's this long history of interactions between music and text. So there are many songs inspired by William Shakespeare, Oscar Wilde, and of course, Edgar Allan Poe. So I came across this song in our Poe collection, and if you look closely at the bottom right, it says, "Ascribed to my wife, Mrs. Poe by E.A. Poe, 1835. So it claims to be a manuscript written out by Poe for his wife shortly before they were married. Now, the song itself was actually published much earlier in 1827. Edgar Allan Poe would have been too young to have composed this song himself, but it's possible that he copied it out for his wife as a sort of amusing gift before their wedding. The song was actually originally spelled Mrs. Poe, just P-O, as a sort of play on the word poor. So the lyrics here are a woman saying she doesn't want to marry Mr. Poe because she doesn't want to be seen as poor. Now, we've been testing the paper, the ink, handwriting, the watermark of this manuscript, and at this point we think it is almost certainly a forgery, but we have not been able to find out for certain, for 100% certain. So it's been this really interesting and fun process to work with our conservation team, to look at the paper, to look at the ink and the watermark. And I felt that that was just too interesting and too mysterious of a manuscript to not put on display. So I asked Teresa to record it for us. This may be the first ever recording of the song. And you'll notice that there are also some spoken sections, which are kind of interesting. There's a mixture between singing and speaking. So this is Mrs. Poe.
To hear the little boys and girls of the village cry, Mistress Poe, Neighbor Poe,
All right, so there are a couple of questions that came in into the chat during that performance, so I just wanted to quickly address those. The one question is really great. It's what would have been the benefit of forging something like this? This is one of the biggest questions about why this manuscript is so confusing. So something that we have on display near the manuscript is the letter from George Wright, who claimed to be the original finder of this manuscript in Palo Alto, California. He basically donated this to the Poe Society in Baltimore. He claims in his letters that there are many, many interested parties that want to buy this for large sums of money, but he eventually sells it to them for about $12, which I think would come to around $200 or $300 today. It's also a very bold forgery, if it is one, because if you're going to forge Poe, why would you choose to do musical notation when there are no other examples of musical notation in Poe's handwriting? Something else I'll point out that's a bit strange is if you look down here at the signature where it says E.A. Poe 1835, the A is not typically how Poe would do his autograph. Typically, he would use a pointy A, whereas in this case, it's a rounded A. So if someone were to forge this, they clearly knew enough about Poe's life to place this around the time he was married. They knew enough about his handwriting, but they chose to do non-standard notation and they chose to do an atypical autograph. So it's very confusing to say the least. Another question that came in is there classical music involved or more so popular music? So most of the music on display is popular, but we do have a couple of classical songs on display, and there are many in the Levy collection. In particular, it was really popular, especially in the 19th century, to sort of import classical music into the United States, both intellectually by copying it here, producing a new version here, or by physically importing it from London and from Germany. So we have a couple of songs like Mendelssohn's Wedding March on display to sort of illustrate the sort of fascination that we had with European music. So I wanted to thank you all again for joining us, to thank Winston again, to thank Hopkins at Home. The exhibit is open at the George Peabody Library through July 1st. I hope you'll come and see it. We're also planning some public performances as part of the exhibit, and I'll be giving a couple of highlights tours twice per month. So thanks so much again for joining us. Happy spring. Hope you have a great rest of your week.